Um, Welcome, everyone. We are starting our afternoon session of the Board of Behavioral Sciences. Today is Friday, August 14th, and it is 12:41 p.m. My name is Max Esposi. I'm the chair, and we will continue with Roseanne on the agenda item number 19. Am I correct, Roseanne?
Let's see. We did 19, which is AB 465. We're going to skip to agenda item 23, which is AB 2028. And I should explain, you see a lot of items on the agenda that we're not going to be discussing today.
Okay.
There's a reason for that. We're in kind of a weird time with COVID and legislation. Usually there would be a lot of bills that we already had positions on that are either dead or have moved closer to signing. That's normally at this time of year. That's not the case right now. A lot of bills are still moving. A lot of bills are still going through committee. And so what we did to account for the fact that a lot of bills are being amended right now is we put all bills that the board had a position on already on our agenda. That way, if they were amended in the 10-day time frame, that we had the opportunity to discuss them versus not being able to discuss them. So bills that were on the agenda that were not amended from our last position, we won't be discussing. So I'll be kind of directing you to which bill we're going to talk about next, because we're only going to be discussing the ones that have been amended since we last considered them.
I love it. We're playing ahead of the game. That's good. So tell me where to go next. 23rd, you said?
Okay, it's going to be agenda item 23. That's AB 2028.
Okay, perfect.
The title of that bill is State Agencies Meetings. This is a bill that was amended since the board previously considered it. The previous position that the board had taken was neutral. And what this bill does is, under current law, there is the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which state bodies, including this board, are subject to. And this bill makes two proposed changes to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. It makes a change to require state bodies to post all meeting materials online at specified times in advance of the meeting, depending on the types of materials. And a change to allow public comment on any agenda item of state body's meeting, regardless of whether the item has already been considered and public comment allowed at a committee meeting of the state body. So as you know, our board is subject to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. It requires proceedings of public agencies to be conducted openly so that the public may participate. And it requires state bodies to post a meeting notice to anyone who requests it in writing, and to also post the notice on the internet at least 10 days in advance of a meeting, which in this case is why we posted all of our potential bills that could change, so that we have the right to talk about them if they're on the agenda. So this bill, it's been amended a little bit since we last considered it in June. Right now it requires that the required meeting notice be posted online 10 days in advance of a meeting, and it must include all writings or materials provided to members of the state body by its staff or another body member that are connected to a matter to be discussed or considered at the meeting. The state body may only distribute or discuss writings or materials that meet this requirement. The writings or materials must be made available on the state internet body's website no later than the first business day following the distribution of the writings materials to the members of the state body, or 48 hours prior to the meeting, whichever is sooner. And then it also is providing that any writings or materials provided to members of the state body by another state body must be posted on the website no later than the first business day following the dissemination of the materials to members, but prior to the meeting. It states this does not apply to closed session materials, and it contains it still contains the exemption that we discussed last time, that if writing and materials are on an agenda for discussion that are related to legislation, the state body can satisfy the posting requirements by posting the writings as they become available, as they become available as amendments are made. We just need to make sure that it's clear what date the new changed writing materials were posted and what the changes are. So the intent of this bill is the author is looking to close some loopholes in the Bagley-Keene Act about agendas being posted 10 days in advance, that they know that requirement does not include supporting documents, and that the public should also have a right to review those. Previously, the board had taken an opposed unless amended on an earlier version of this bill because it was previously requiring that all materials be posted 10 days in advance, and the concern was that it could have a chilling effect on the board's ability to take positions on legislation. That, as I discussed earlier, has since been corrected, and it allows for an allowance for that. And so at the March 2020 meeting, that's when the board had taken the opposed unless amended. Based on subsequent amendments to the bill and I don't see any other concerning changes at that point that have been made since then, but the bill has been amended enough that we wanted to bring it back for reconsideration, just in case the board wanted to change its position.
Thank you, Roseanne. So any comments from the board? Opening discussion. Yes, Susan.
How many days? I'm confused. How many days?
So the meeting materials, the agenda has to be posted 10 days prior. And this bill would basically say that, that if we got materials from another, from a board member or from the staff, they must be made available within 48 hours prior to the meeting or the following business day when the meeting materials are distributed to the board members. So basically, once the board members have them, the next day they have to be available to the public, except for legislation, because obviously that can change very quickly when the legislature is in session. So there's a carve out for that the legislation up until the board meeting can be posted anytime it becomes available.
But the agenda has to be published 10 days in advance.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Okay, Leah. Thank you.
So I don't know that we need to take a position on this, and I'm looking for recommendations from Roseanne or Kim, but to me, I think we just kind of leave it as it is. It's an improvement. I think we're safe. We can get updated legislation. So I'm inclined to just leave it.
So yeah, you can either do no position if you don't want to take a position, or you can reaffirm the neutral position.
Christina.
So I just want to check in with the staff, because of the change. Is this version, how does this version impact the staff, or, will that be more convenient or inconvenience? Or, will that create any of the trouble, difficulties in terms of publishing, the materials?
It could, it's definitely when we are posting something to the website, it becomes a challenge because it has to go through our IT department. And so there's some lead time that's involved in that. But the version is definitely, all of that being said, the version is definitely much more workable than it was previously, especially with the concerns about legislation and having the materials change and then having to take a position, either take it off the agenda because we're not discussing anything current, or having to take a position on that bill that's not in its current form.
I think sorry. So I think last time, I see John. Okay, I see you. But, but I think last time when we, decided to take a neutral position was because of the unworkability,
Yes.
for the staff, so it looks like if that is removed, then, our concern has been addressed.
Right.
Thank
John.
you.
And actually, I just wanted to ask Kim directly. You had pointed out some procedural concerns you had with the last version of the bill. Do you feel those have been addressed and it's a workable stance for us to support?
Yeah, the allowance to let us bring forth the latest revision to a piece of legislation that we're discussing really eased my concern quite a bit. I mean, as you saw yesterday, we were funneling out the latest version, and even this morning, something changed and we didn't need to discuss. So yeah, not ideal, but it's workable. I think we can do it.
Okay. Do we have anyone else in?
So I'm not clear. Roseanne, is there any political reason it's better to vote to take a neutral position or just not say anything? Do you see any advantage in one position or another?
No, I would more lean toward the neutral position because we had opposed unless amended before. So the author last time asked me to send a letter saying that we were now neutral because we had a neutral position. So I think that that's probably preferable in this case because we had opposed unless amended before, but either one is fine.
Then I'll make a motion that we take a neutral position and for the board and to allow the board staff to work with the author on any non-substantive changes.
I'll second that. Any additional comments, and then from the public as well? Christina first.
So just my little education, so the public comment provision, because of all these negative, remove and disallowed, and so I just want to maybe hear from Roseanne that. So what is that now that about the public comment provision? Is that the public can comment on the items that has been commented by the board?
Yes. So the amendments, the way that it focuses, and Sabina, correct me if I'm wrong, but my read on this is it's the time limitations of when things have to be posted. If there's new materials, it talks explicitly about who the materials come from. So it's talking about materials from the board staff or another state agency's staff. It does not preclude public comments or feedback.
Okay, it's just I keep reading it when my brain doesn't work, and it's just like, okay, what were you really trying to say?
It is, yeah, it is definitely, you have to kind of sit down and kind of work through it. It's one of those things that you have to sort of like parse it out separately and think about it one group at a time.
So will that also, how, in the meeting wise, that the allow public comment, not allow public comment, do you see any impact on, for us, for the board to?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't see any impact with the current amendments. I think that it's workable.
Perfect. Steve, can you check with the public, please?
I'm checking now. I don't see any. Let me make sure. Yep. No hands raised. Anybody who does not hand raised, do they need to?
Okay, sounds good. So we have a motion on the table from Leah and seconded by me. Christina, can we take a vote?
Dr. Leah Brew?
Yes.
Deborah Brown?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga?
Yes.
John Sovek?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Christina Wong?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina. I believe we're moving to Roseanne 24.
Item 24, AB 2112, which is titled Suicide Prevention. And also note, yesterday you received a new version of this bill. You did not receive a new analysis because the amendments were very minor. I'm just going to point those out. But the new version that we will be considering for a position today is the amended August 12th, 2020 version. And so what this bill does is it establishes the Office of Suicide Prevention within the State Department of Public Health. And it allows the responsibilities of the office to include several different items. One of those items, well, I should say first that the board had previously considered this bill and took it at its June meeting, and it took a support position. But it also, at the same time, the board separately directed staff to reach out to the author's office regarding the wording in one of the sections of the bill, and that was Health and Safety Code, section 131300A4, regarding one of the responsibilities of the office. That sentence talks about one of the responsibilities being marshaling the insights and energy of medical professionals with mental health experience or expertise. And it talked about people who could do that being scientists, other academic experts, public health experts, and people with lived experiences. The board wanted to suggest that licensed healthcare professionals with mental health experience also be included in that list of people who they could marshal insights from. And so we did reach out to the author's office to suggest that, and they did take that amendment. And so that is in there. It now reads as, if you look at the, on your analysis, under comments, item 2, previous position, the exact wording of the amendment is there in italics. It reads, marshaling the insights and energy of medical professionals with mental health experience or expertise, licensed healthcare professionals with mental health experience, scientists and other academic experts, as well as public health experts, public servants, and people with lived experience, including peers and survivors, to address the crisis of suicide. So that's one of the changes that was made since the board last considered this. The other changes that were made yesterday were very minor. As I mentioned, they added some co-authors. And also, if you look at your analysis under this bill, item number 7, the other amendment that was made, it says requires the Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission to transfer its suicide prevention contracts to the office. It now says that it transfers its suicide prevention efforts to the office. So a very minor change there. And so, but the board's had a previous support position with the request for that amendment about the licensed healthcare professionals with mental health experience, and that concern was addressed by the author. So I will open it up to discussion.
Kelly and then Christina.
So I do have a question for Ms. Knight. Assuming that this bill passes, would it also trigger the requirement for peer specialists if that bill passes? If the peer specialist certification bill passes, would this requirement then be levied upon a potential peer specialist?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's so the bill creates the Office of Suicide Prevention. It doesn't really bring in like certain mental health professionals into the loop. It's just it's creating the office and then outlining responsibilities of the office. And so it's sort of a separate thing from that. It's not saying, well, these are the professionals that this office has to look at or anything.
Right.
Okay, so it's not going to
the responsibilities.
All right, so it's not going to lump in. Okay, cool.
No.
Without my only other sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say in the new text, it does point out that this transfer shall not include staff. So they're not including staff or anything right there. They're just creating the office. Okay,
so then my only other comment would be that I think it's a great idea having worked with tribal communities with high risks of suicide and LGBT communities.
Thank you, Kelly. And then Christina, and then Susan.
I just want to thank Roseanne, reach out to the office, and I'm very glad that, they actually take our advice. So I just want to thank the staff.
Wonderful. Susan?
I just want to find out, because I don't know. Does every profession, for example, on our board, require special training in suicide prevention, or what? I don't even know what the word is. But for example, Chris, for schools, is there a special training dealing with suicide? School counselors or school?
Yeah, every credentialed school person has to go through. Every school has to have a suicide prevention plan in place, and the people that manage students that have credentials have to. But our license My license has to have, well, all the licenses as of January 2021 have to have 6 hours of suicide assessment and prevention.
Susan, that's actually a new requirement that's coming this January, based on a bill that was run a couple of years ago. As of January 1st, and all licensees who are renewing after that point will be required to have taken 6 hours of continuing education in suicide risk assessment, and all schools as well are going to be required to require at least 6 hours of that kind of type of coursework for their master's degree students.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Christina Demi.
I just want to give information, for Susan too. Working in the county, under the Mental Health Service Act funding, the suicide prevention is actually a big part of it. And so it has been in place, to really promote, the suicide prevention in the community, for a very long time. And staff has been definitely, that they need to be trained. And so, so may not be, really based on, the state regulation, how many CEUs that they have to take, but, it's definitely not something new. And, so, and the staff, I think, for the mental health staff, they are definitely, getting knowledge and training, and that's part of our work, every day. So just want to give you that information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. That's always very useful. Actually, I would like to make a motion to move to, well, the verbiage will be in this case to approve the bill as modified.
I'll second that.
Well, I think it would be
Support.
well, just
Support.
it would just be a support. Yeah.
Yeah, that will do it.
And I will still support it. I will still second it.
You'll see second it. Thank you, Roseanne, I know every time you have to go back and reach out, it's not just an easy work, especially under COVID, finding right people and having those conversations. So it's really very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Christina?
Do we have any public comments, Steve?
Oh,
No
thank
public comment.
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
Nope.
Move the vote. Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Biskowski,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga,
Yes.
John Sovic,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. We're moving to item 25, Roseanne?
We're actually jumping now to item 29.
I like
That's
that.
going to be SB 803.
I really like that. Thank
The
you.
title of the bill is Mental Health Services Peer Support Specialist Certification. And the board had previously considered this bill back in June at its June meeting and had taken a support position. And really, this bill has been amended, and the amendments were on the significant side, but the amendments that were made since the board last considered this bill were more on the funding and the wording around Medi-Cal. And so I don't know that the position will change, but the author's office, regardless, has asked us for an updated position. So they're really trying to make a big effort to get as many supporters on board as possible. So they wanted to see if we would take a position on the most current version of the bill. So I agreed to put that in, even though the changes weren't all that much. So what this bill does, it requires the State Department of Healthcare Services, or DHCS, to establish a certification body for peer support specialists. And it requires DHCS to seek federal funding waivers or other state plan amendments to achieve certain objectives, such as including peer support specialist services as the distinct service type under the Medi-Cal program. And so the main most recent amendments have really been in regards to funding and the wording around the Medi-Cal program. The bill establishes the Peer Support Specialist Certification Program Act of 2020. It provides a definition of peer support specialists. It requires the DHCS to establish a certification body by July 1st, 2021 to provide the certification. It requires DHCS to outline or define responsibilities, practice guidelines, and supervision standards for peer support specialists, as well as training requirements, a code of ethics, continuing education requirements, and a process for certification renewal. And also establish a fee schedule, which that part is new. That's new language since you last considered it. It provides minimum applicant requirements for applicants. It provides some language to protect our practice acts. It has language that says the act does not imply as a certification holder is qualified to or authorized to diagnose an illness, prescribe medication, or provide clinical services. It says that it does not alter the scope of practice for a healthcare professional or authorize delivery of healthcare services in a manner or not authorized under the Business and Professions Code or Health and Safety Code. So it includes that language to protect already licensed practitioners from overlap. It requires DHCS to seek federal waivers or other state plan amendments to include peer support specialists as a provider type, as a distinct service type provided to eligible Medi-Cal beneficiaries in a county if the county elects to provide peer support specialist services and fund the non-federal share of those services. And it allows DHCS to, or requires DHCS to seek federal waivers or amendments to develop and implement billing codes, reimbursement rates, and claiming requirements. The author in their request for support for the bill notes that California lags behind the rest of the country in implementing a peer support specialist certification plan. Currently, the Department of Veterans Affairs in 48 other states either have or are developing a program. And as I said earlier, the board considered this bill at its June 5th meeting and took a support position. So I will open it up for discussion now.
I see Christina.
I have said many times, that I fully support this bill. And I think this has been, we spend a lot of time, also giving advice, how to, or suggestion, how we can, refine it. So I think it's come to the time that, we really should, continue to support the bill. And I have actually, it's really amazing to me that, I worked with, those, the peer support specialists and just really see, the power and the influence, positive influence, when they have the lived experience to really share that, with the other client. So I really, encourage, I would love to make a motion real quick, but I would also, I think it's also important that Kelly speak, but I would definitely, love to support that.
Thank you, Christina and Kelly.
So last night in Imperial County, we, our peer specialist and me had our only mental health support group in 120 miles. That is what we got over here. And in rural communities, that's what peer specialists do. We fill the gaps where we do not have proper clinical mental health services by offering support. This bill is critical for those of us in underprivileged and marginalized communities, particularly border communities and tribal communities. And I strongly would suggest to my fellow board members that we offer support for this bill. It will help provide good mental health support for thousands and thousands of Californians in rural communities who are in desperate need of that support.
Before I go to you, is there any other members? Go, Christina.
I would like to make a motion to support this bill.
Kelly,
hey, ball rolling.
Susan put her hand up. I think she's trying to second.
Susan.
Sorry.
So I'm sorry, I missed what you said. Yeah.
Second.
Oh, second. Wow. So
I don't know what's wrong with it.
It's okay. So we have a motion from Christina, Susan, public. Members of the public, Steve?
No members of the public. No hands up.
And we're ready with Christina. Let's do it.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Biskowski,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Kelly Ranafinga,
Yes.
John Sovic,
Yes.
Wendy Stratt,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Yay!
Yes, excitements are allowed.
Actually, I need to mute myself before I get too excited. Sorry.
Okay, Roseanne, at this point, I'm not going to guess anymore. Are we going? What's the
Fair
item?
enough. Yes, it's kind of we're jumping around here. Actually, we're going to the item number 30, the next item. It's going to be SB 55 in
Okay.
your packet. The title of the bill is Health Coverage, Mental Health, or Substance Use Disorders. And
Yes.
previously, when we the board last considered this bill in June, they had taken a support position. So a little bit's changed. There's been some amendments so that we need to discuss. So that's why it's back today. What this bill does is it expands California's 1999 Mental Health Parity Act. That act required health plans and health insurers to provide coverage for the diagnosis and medically necessary treatment of severe mental illness for persons of any age, and also for for serious emotional disturbances of a child under the same terms and conditions applied to other medical conditions. This bill updates that act. It requires health plans and insurers that provide hospital, medical, or surgical coverage to cover all medically necessary treatment of mental health and substance use disorders under the same terms and conditions applied to other medical conditions. Previous law, like I said, limits the requirements to medically necessary treatment of severe mental illness, which is defined in that law, and also emotional disturbances of a child, which is defined under current law. And so this bill, like I said, updates that. The board, when they discussed this bill at the June meeting, took a support position, but the board also directed staff at the time, separate from its support position, directed staff to ask the author's office to consider amendments related to the definition that's in the bill of a healthcare provider. In the previously considered version of the bill, Health and Safety Code section 1374.72A4 and Insurance Code section 10144.5A4 specifically included associate marriage and family therapists and marriage and family therapist trainees in the definition of a healthcare provider. So separate from its support position, the board requested that the associate social workers and also associate professional clinical counselors also be included in the definition for consistency. Because of course the board, if one of our associate types is included, the board likes to ensure that the other associate types are also included equally so that there's no inequities in the professions and what they're able to do or who is able to be hired for specific jobs. The board also requested that marriage and family therapist trainees be removed from the definition of a healthcare provider for purposes of the bill due to concerns that trainees who are still in school and have not graduated from their master's degree program concerns about them being considered full-fledged healthcare providers. So I spoke with the author's office and now ended up also doing a conference call with the author and the Senate Health Committee staff member who was the one that requested that definition of healthcare provider specifically be included. And so we had a conversation, and the staff member from the Health Committee explained that the definition that's being used in this bill is the exact same definition of a healthcare provider for purposes of telehealth and in Business and Professions Code 2290.5. She had concerns about removing MFT trainees from the language, citing when the 2290.5 definition was developed for telehealth, MFT trainees needed to be included because the reason she used was there are some autism service providers that are MFT trainees, and if they weren't included, it could potentially cause unintended consequences. She was very receptive to including the associate professional clinical counselors and associate clinical social workers, but it did not sound like willing to delete the MFT trainees for that reason. And then after our conversation with the Senate Health Committee and the author's staff reached back out to me saying that because of legislative deadlines that they were willing to take some of our amendments regarding associates, but they needed to be done before the board meeting. The language needed to be provided before the board meeting, or she could not guarantee the amendments were made. So we had to make a decision. And so in terms of being consistent and equitable to all of our license types, we submitted the language that's included in the bottom of page, it looks like 37, under item 4, submitted amendments. So we did request that associate clinical social workers and associate professional clinical counselors be included in the sections, but also because they were not willing to take out the MFT trainees, we also requested at the time that the clinical counselor trainees be included because there was an inequity there, with the caveat that we were going to take it back to the trainee portion back to the board for further discussion because there had been some concern there. And so that's what we want to discuss today. That has been amended into the bill. And I know that there were some concerns about trainee, however, it does not necessarily sound like there's willingness to take it out. And so I, at this point, would like to open that up for discussion.
Okay, I see Leah.
The general idea of this is really, really important and way overdue, rather than criminalizing substance abuse problems, I think. I'm curious, Roseanne, about the not adding students in social work programs if we were adding the other trainees. I know we probably need to go back and talk with them about that. But I was just curious that why social work wasn't included.
I'll let NESW speak to that. They've asked that, as a general rule, they prefer that social work interns not be included in statute.
Okay, that makes sense.
You can go to Rebecca if you want to. Would you like them to answer this, Leah? Or?
I think I have heard them say that before, but if they want to, I'm certainly willing to listen. But knowing that changes can always be made later, I'd rather it go imperfect and then go modify it than lose the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Any other members of the board? Public comments?
Thought I saw Rebecca's hand there. Rebecca. Okay, there it is.
Unmute. Put it back up. Yeah, that's true that we don't like to include social work programs in legislation. We have our own national accreditation. But the only thing I wanted to add is that we also don't consider our students in schools to be full-fledged professionals. And so we would also concur with the thoughts on trainees.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. Anyone else from the public, Steve? Yes.
Looks like yes. Jennifer, Allie?
Yeah, this has been camp does support this bill, and it's my understanding that our trainees do fall under the autism spectrum, and that's where they're practicing care with autism treatment providers based on previous discussions with CARD, whose acronym I don't understand, but as I don't remember what their acronym stands for, but the way that the autism provision works is that the actual provider that would be contracted with the health plan gives them rigorous training, but it's just an opportunity for them to get experience. And so when they are providing autism care, it's not that they're unsupervised by somebody that's more qualified than they are. It's just an opportunity for them to be employed. And so that's one of the reasons that we support our trainees being included. It's for those that are in the autism space. And I didn't mean to just raise my hand again. I was done talking and meant to hit mute. I misclicked, sorry.
It's okay. More to say, huh? Janley Wong. Janley.
You all know what I've had to say about this in the past, and I know it sounds pretty boring, but there are some new members of the board that haven't heard me before. So here's their chance to hear what I have to say. First of all, students are not under the jurisdiction of the BBS. It may sound like that, you can put it in the law, but that's not the case. They're not licensed, they're not registered, so they're not under the jurisdiction of the BBS. They are, however, under the jurisdiction of their program in the university. So all you have to do is take a look at the liability issue. And what the university does, I'm sure it's true with the other programs, is for the most part, they provide the blanket liability insurance for the students when they're earning their practicum. And then finally, the other issue is, and I know it's very sensitive and confusing, training and education are not identical. The program, master's programs for our licensees are professional education programs with a practicum component. It's not like they're getting vocational training. So because they're getting professional educational training, they have to do things like, believe it or not, combine theory and practice. They have to have practice courses and symposiums, and they have to debate in those symposiums different methods, their experiences in the field, and also perhaps even change what they're doing in the field based on their practicums and their field supervision. So it's very different than saying, here's a postgraduate with a master's degree, they registered with the board, and they're going to accumulate work experience hours towards licensure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
No hands raised. Anybody else that does not have a hand raised? It looks like we're good.
And Leah, I know what she's going to do.
I'm going to make a motion to support this. Is there any particular version here, Roseanne?
It would be the August 6th version, the one that's included. So it's just
Okay.
a straight support.
Okay.
If you're okay with the trainees being included in the new amendments.
With an understanding that board staff will continue to work with the author for any non-substantive changes and maybe continue the conversation about taking trainees out but voting for it even as is.
So the board, would you want me to ask again to take the trainees out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just to continue that conversation with them so that they understand the consequences of that. Or maybe it can be languaged in a way that's really clear that the trainee is under the supervision of somebody licensed. And I say that because the LPCC, like social work, is not under the board pre-degree, because those pre-degree hours don't count. So for LPCCs, there's an additional risk because they aren't required to be supervised by a licensed person. It's the program that makes that decision.
I'll second that.
Would you want the LPCC trainees to be taken out if that's possible and not the MFTs?
Oh, so it's hard right now. I'm really honestly torn between equity among the two professions and uncertainty about the liability. I think it's an unpopular position, but I would say it's probably safer not to have the LPCCs because they aren't necessarily under the supervision of somebody licensed.
I will second that. And Leah, let me just add that it's not just about the LPCC too. Social worker is in the same boat.
Yeah.
And I think that's, just on my side note, I think that's definitely some sort of like another, license, in equity, So, it's a little bit beyond, what we should be talking about today. But I think, for, just to support that bill means that, our position basically hasn't changed. And yes. So I definitely want to support Leah for that too. So it means that, I'll second.
Perfect. I'm not sure, Chris Jones. Excuse me. Chris Jones, I don't know if you were raising your hands. I maybe missed seeing you.
No, I wasn't.
Okay, perfect.
Roseanne was saying something, Max.
I just wanted to clarify. So the position is support, and then separate from that, we would like to keep working with the author's office asked to take LPCC trainees out. And then to clarify the MFT trainees, if they're willing to do it, they may say that no amendments are possible at this point. But to clarify that they're under the purview of their school, they're not licensed professionals yet.
Right, and that it's risky for consumers.
Okay.
Okay, any public members? Steve?
Nope. Don't see any hands raised.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. It's just Jennifer. Allie?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the MFT trainees are supervised by the autism service provider that has the contract and is with the health plans, and they're responsible for supervising that work. So it would be just like, any one of us. Well, I'm not a professional or a provider. I could go and work for an autism service provider. If I had certain classes and were trained by them and supervised. So it's not a field that has its standalone licensure now. The requirements for the providers live in regional center regulations. And so it's under that purview that the MFTs do provide. We know that our MFT, trainees do work there, but it's not, as Jan Lee said, it's not that they're underneath the board, and I don't want you to think that they're unsupervised or representing themselves as MFTs. It's really just kind of the autism space. It's just a little bit different, and it falls under health plan coverage under behavioral health.
Thank you, Jennifer. There is a follow-up with Leah.
Yeah, so just to respond to that, that's great if they're in the autism realm, but we have to consider people who aren't in the autism realm and might be working in other types of settings. So if there's a way they wanted to specify it with language for working in a particular type of agency that has some sort of oversight, that might be safer, Roseanne, for your conversation with them, as opposed to leaving it blanket, because not all agencies are equal.
Okay. Steve,
You have one more comment from
Okay.
Jan Lee.
Thank you once again, and I hope my colleagues Jennifer and Leah and others correct me if I'm wrong, but MFT trainees are not required to have licensed MFT supervision. I know that sounds like it's completely wrong, but the nuance is if they want their hours counted, then they have to be licensed. They have to be supervised by a licensed person. If they don't want their hours, and the majority of their hours are not required to be supervised by a licensed person. So probably that's never going to be the case, but I just want to clarify that it's not the BBS requiring them to be supervised. It's if you want your hours to be accepted by the BBS, you will get licensed supervision. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeneline. And just for the sake of transparency with the public, every time, I know who you are, Jeneline, Jennifer, Rebecca, but if you can each time introduce yourself, because we have viewers, and so that to make sure that they know who is speaking. Thank you so much. Anyone else, Steve?
I don't see any hands raised, so nope, we're done.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, so we are going, Christina, we're going to hold the vote.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Perfect. Roseanne.
All right, we're going to move on to item number 31, which is SB 878. The title of this bill is Department of Consumer Affairs License Application Processing Timeframes. And the board had previously considered this bill and had taken a support if amended position. So this bill would require the board to post average license application processing timeframes on its website at least quarterly. Beginning July 1, 2021, the quarterly posts would need to be prominently displayed on the website. It would need to either be the average timeframes for processing initial and renewal license applications, or the combined current average timeframe for processing both initial and renewal license applications. And then also we would need to prominently display on the website either the current average timeframes for processing each license type, or the current average time frame for processing all license types that the board administers. The author notes that it's crucial for DCA licensing entities to process applications in a timely manner so that businesses can open and people can work. The board does currently post processing times by application type weekly. We post it on our Facebook and Twitter pages, our social media. The timeframes are shown a little bit differently than this bill prescribes. They're not shown by averages. They're processed based on date received. And therefore, for each application type, the board lists the range of receipt dates of applications, and that way the applicant can look and say, I know I sent my application on July 15th, and oh, they're working on July 1st right now, so they're going to get to me soon. So that's kind of the logic behind that. Staff prefers posting the information on social media rather than the website because it can be posted directly and it's easily accessible to applicants. There's a little bit of a wait time to go through the IT unit, and that process can take several days. And in terms of processing for our renewals, currently if a license or registrant renews online, it's worth noting that if they renew through their Breeze account online, the processing time, assuming that they provide all the required information and pay their fee, the renewal is instant. So there's virtually no processing time there. It updates right away. The board had taken the support if amended position on a previous version of the bill, and it asked for 3 different amendments. The first one was an allowance that the posting be made on official social media sites instead of the website, because social media can be updated more rapidly. An allowance to post applications based on receipt date rather than average time frames, and a specification on how often processing times must be updated. So since the last board meeting, the bill has been amended to specify the frequency of the updates. It has to be quarterly. The other 2 requested amendments have not been made. And when I talked to the author's office, they had specific reasons for this. In terms of the posting being on social media, their concern is that they wanted it to be on the website because their concern is that not everybody has a social media account. So not everybody might not have access to it. And they, in terms of requiring the average timeframes to be published instead of the receipt date, they believe that average processing timeframes are a better estimate for students to estimate what their wait time is going to be in plan according. So that was their take on it. And so that's where we're at right now. And so we're back today to ask you to consider the bill again, given what's changed and what has not. So I'll open it up for discussion.
Yeah.
Me again. So I think there's some legitimacy, and some people don't have social media accounts, me included. So I think it would be fine, but here's maybe a way that we could do it easily. You're already including a lot of this information in our quarterly reports, and maybe when we upload for the board meetings, we'll upload that information, which would include both what we're already doing with the dates that we're working on. As of August 12th, these are the dates that we're working on, and then here's the average number of days. And then I would also say, then put a link to social media to say, for more up-to-date information, click here for Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is that we're using. So I think that way we can continue to inform our folks through social media like we have been doing, but also meet the law. And I'm in support of this. I think there's a way that we can do all of it.
Steve and was Kelly? Did you have your hands up too?
Okay.
Steve, you want a clarification? I'm sorry.
I was just going to clarify, that's currently what we do right now. So on the website, you can actually access the timeframes from our website or our Facebook. So if you go down there, it's just a matter of scrolling. So you can do that. So just a heads up.
Yeah,
Okay.
and does it have both the average and the dates that you're working on?
So we don't do the average. We used to do the average. We find that it causes a lot more confusion and a lot more calls for us, because then it kind of leaves the applicant in a questioning. And because we can have, by doing the dates that we're working on, it seems to lessen the calls that we get about status checks, as in the average doesn't really, it causes more questions.
So Steve, is it possible, in order to meet the letter of the law here, to put the average over the last quarter was X number of days, and then I would even keep a chart of a year's worth, or a year and a quarter's worth, so they can see that like summer is a lot worse than, March or something. And then also keep the processing times, because if you describe that, hey, this is a 90-day average, then and then compare it to previous 90-day averages, I think that's really helpful when we're looking at different quarters for people to understand that, at least for the website part. And then they can link over for the detailed stuff about, see where it is right now on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely, we've got access to those stats and however they want to present.
Yeah,
I think our big thing.
That way you don't get those calls.
Yeah, and well, I mean, we don't mind the calls, but it helps to reduce because that is extra workload. But it's just the fact of having to continually update the website is kind of at least what I kind of want to avoid as much as possible. So
doing it quarterly with the meetings, right?
Well, maybe, I mean, I don't know if the author is willing to accept that we do post this stuff on a quarterly basis on our, on our actual board material. Would that count, or do they want us to extract that maybe and just push that out? So
it would need to be, it says, as it's written, let me find the exact language, prominently displayed on the website. So I think it would have to be more like
pull that.
We would have to pull that from the board materials and put it.
Yeah,
but I was thinking for the quarterly meetings, because we're already asking, because this is a web issue, right? Like that we have to request somebody else to do it. So if we're already doing it for posting the agenda, we could be doing it for posting this at the same time. So it's all happening at once.
Okay, we have Kelly. It's been waiting for a while. Kelly.
Okay. So.
I guess I don't understand why we're posting on the website, because the Facebook page is publicly available. Why would we do it in two places? Anyone can go on. I just did it right now. I went onto incognito status. I clicked the Facebook and I can see everything. You don't need a social media account to access the Facebook data. So, yeah.
Christina?
So I would like to think of this as a state requirement versus also, as a minimum, and then on top of it, what other practices that we could do. And so it seems to me that, now since it's changed to quarterly reporting, and I think, that is not really addressing the concern of posting, the prominent, information to the licensees. But so I'm not opposing this bill at all, but I'm just really thinking that, now with the change, it doesn't really help, that the licensees to quickly, to know, what the processing time and the time frame. And so, so my thought is that, that this bill particularly is a very minimum sort of like that, requirement to increase the transparency. But I think on top of that, the more effective and efficient way is actually to use, say like the email. We collect those, email and send it out that blast, and just send out a notification, now the BBS, has been processing this time, the application from what to what. And so I think we can definitely do, apart from the reporting, and do more about that. So I'm not giving the direction to the staff, but I think it's also, I just want to think that that there's definitely more that we could do, but not just govern, by this piece of legislation.
And I'd say it definitely sets a baseline minimum. We're already doing more than that on Facebook with the weekly updates. But this sets a minimum. You don't have, if the board doesn't want to, and we had a support of amended position. You don't have to, you could change your position to no position or neutral, or you don't have to keep the support, or you can.
Okay, I saw Susan.
Sorry, the only thing that I was going to say, when you post it on our website, is that what takes the longest time? Is that what the problem? I don't know.
It's
Yes,
just,
it is. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I'm saying, yeah, it can take a while, and it's not a reflection on OIS or the web team. They can get it up there, but it is just another where we actually have to put in a request to get it changed, to go through that process. Facebook, I could do it right now.
Yeah, but the problem with Facebook is a lot of people find it abhorrent. They don't want to have anything to do with Facebook. They don't want their name associated with it. They don't want to.
Oh no, that's true. But you know what? We actually get more. I think we have gotten way more traction on those weekly updates on Facebook than we have on the website. And you have to think about who's actually applying. We're looking at people that are applying for their initial associate registration, and also people with the licensing and examination. Those are the main people that will actually, applicants that will go in and look for those status checks. It's a younger generation. I'm thinking more of them do actually utilize Facebook more than website.
That is shocking.
Not saying that we do need to make it accessible to everyone. Yeah. That's why I still want it on the web, but it's just kind of.
My kids tell me nobody uses Facebook anymore.
That's true, actually, now too. I'm gonna have to start getting it on TikTok.
Leah?
So just, Susan, in response to what you were saying, when Kelly said he was able to find it, I just did a quick bbs.ca.gov and I scrolled down, and you don't actually go into Facebook. It's just a window all by itself, and you scroll in that window and it is right there. And Kelly, just a thought for you. So I want to support this, even though it's imperfect, because I think other professionals in DCA, other professions within DCA aren't doing as well as we are. And those potential licensees have a right to know. So I'm still leaning towards supporting this, even though it's not ideal and that the author is not willing to make that change.
Okay, do we have anyone with a possible motion, and then John?
No.
Okay, John.
So I'd actually like to move to support with no amendments. The reason being is, as Steve and Kim have been so good about doing, we are a well-organized board. We are actually going above and beyond the duty. And I think supporting that other boards may need this guidance to get these numbers out to their membership is really important. So I think the overall picture for me is really, really vital. And so let's do our minimum, and let's keep doing our over and above, because that's what our clientele expects of us.
Thank you, John. Sounds like it summarize it. Any second?
I'll second. Okay, no, give it to Christina.
Christina, second.
Literally, so I'm seconding.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on this, Dick?
It doesn't. Oh, we have one. Monica Leal.
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the transparency on response times in general. Like when I call, for example, the phone, it states 48 hours, and I've called since April and I haven't gotten a response back. So I eventually did find the Facebook via my husband, and I got a response, but the response was, I don't have a time frame of when your question can be answered. So I'm kind of just in a loophole of frustration with that kind of transparency.
Yeah, no, I apologize. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we apologize. Monica, do you have a pen and paper?
I do, yes.
Okay. write this down. Kim, Kim,
Huh?
dot Madsen, Madsen,
ADSEN. Uh-huh.
at
Mm-hmm.
DCA
Mm-hmm.
dot CA
Mm-hmm.
dot GOV, V as in Victor.
Uh-huh.
That's my email, and you can email me with your question and I will respond.
Thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Thank you, Kim, for being so generous. I know you'll receive way more than one email now. Anyone else? I think we can move the motion, right? So, Christina, thank you.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Jasposky,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga,
Yes.
John Stovek,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
The motion carried.
Wonderful. Roseanne?
Yes, moving on to item 33, which is the legislative update. So we did kind of a comprehensive review of all bills that the board had taken a position on, sponsored. There were some 2-year bills that were still alive, which is weird to have 2-year bills still alive at this time of year, but we had some. So that is all contained in the legislative update. The board pursued sponsorship of a few different proposals this year, and I wanted to give an update on each one of those. AB 2363, which is Assemblymember Arambula, which is our practice setting definitions bill. That's the bill sought to provide specific definitions of private practice, professional corporations, and non-exempt settings. And of course, as you're aware, due to the COVID-19, the legislature had to suddenly unconvene. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but they had to stop meeting for a while, and this caused them to have to pare down a lot of their bill proposals for the year, and this was one of the bill proposals that got cut. We do plan to run this bill proposal to this next year. We will be bringing it, because we have a lot of new board members, we will be bringing this bill back to the November board meeting for another look, and then the hope is to run it next year. And so that's what's going on with AB 2363. AB 2142 was the bill that we had gotten to run our licensing fee increase in. Again, due to the COVID-19 state of emergency, this bill was requested that it be made part of the budget process. And then subsequently, the legislature placed this in bill number AB 3330, which is authored by Assemblymember Calderon. And so that bill was just heard for the first time in the Assembly Business and Professions Committee last week. It did pass. It's going through Assembly Appropriations next week, I believe next Tuesday. And then because it's kind of moving on a weird schedule, it hasn't been through the Senate yet. They're going to have to do some special consideration waivers and move it through the Senate. So that bill is currently moving forward to increase for our fee increase proposal. And then finally, our Omnibus bill proposal, which is the annual bill that we run every year to do technical, non-substantive cleanup changes. That bill is either going to be run in our sunset, these items are either going to be run in our sunset bill this year, which has been deferred to next year, or an Omni bill. That got pared down as well. So we'll be pursuing those changes next year. We'll be bringing them to the October Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting for another look again, since we have a lot of new members. And we'll be adding some additional Omnibus bill items as well. And then pretty much everything else it's summarized in your packet, the things that the board had taken a position, so you can take a look at those too and see the status. That's the legislative update for the year.
Wonderful. Thank you, Roseanne. I believe that, so now we're moving to the item 34, and which are updated on the board rulemaking proposals. So it's you, Christy. Roseanne?
I can
I have you on my agenda for item 34.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm here.
Okay, Chris, sorry.
That's okay, no problem. Let me, 1 second here.
I know Roseanne flew so fast through those that we weren't expecting.
And now I've just lost my window here. Sorry, I was a little off guard.
Okay.
A little fast here. 1 second. Accidentally shut my browser window. My apologies.
Don't worry, no stress. We can stretch.
Okay, so this is an update on all of our regulation packages. And Roseanne, can you cover that first one since that's one you're working on?
Yes, the AB 2138 regulations are currently with final review at OAL. They typically have a 30 days to make a decision, which is today is the 30th day. However, there's a couple of extensions due to the state of emergency that OAL has, so they are allowed to take a lot longer if they need to. I did talk to the OAL attorney this 2 days ago on Wednesday, and he is in the process of completing his review of the 2138 regulations. He was going to be getting back to me. We're working on finalizing the 399, which is the fiscal impact with the Department of Finance right now. And then he's going to be contacting me hopefully next week with the kind of final cleanup things to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So hopefully we'll be having news about that very soon. We've asked for a immediate effective date upon approval, so we'll see if we get that granted. But stay definitely, if you're following the status of that, we're making proposals. Stay tuned to our website for an announcement coming up hopefully pretty soon here.
Thanks, Roseanne. The next regulation package is on hold. It's about the enforcement process, updating our disciplinary process and our uniform standards related to substance abuse and disciplinary guidelines. So this was on hold pending the AB 2138 regulations, and it's continuing to be on hold. We're still discussing within the office and deciding how to approach this at this point. Our supervision related requirements that would make major changes to the process for supervision, including revising some of the qualifications to supervise, requiring supervisors to perform a self-assessment of qualifications and submit that to the board, set forth some requirements for substitute supervisors, change some of our supervisor training requirements, addressing supervisor responsibilities and evaluations of supervisees, strengthening some issues pertaining to documentation of supervision. We're going to make sure there's some consistency across the professions. It's a little different right now, depending on who you're supervising. Addressing some issues with supervision gained outside of California, documentation when a supervisor is incapacitated or deceased, and then dealing with some issues with placement in temporary staffing agencies. So the proposal is currently in the Department of Consumer Affairs final review process. So it's already been noticed to the public. We took our public feedback. We at the last board meeting, we discussed that feedback. And so what it's in now is the DCA and agency have to review it, Department of Finance as well, and then we will submit it to OAL for final approval. So we're hoping that can take effect January 1, so that's our goal. And we'll be updating, obviously, once we know for sure of the effective date, we'll be putting out a lot of updates and doing a lot of outreach on that. We have a reg package pertaining to continuing education and additional training requirements. It's been in preparation for the initial review process. There's been a lot of back and forth with our attorneys on getting it into that process. So they do like a pre-review. So we've had a lot of back and forth, but it's right on that verge of being submitted for initial review with the Department of Consumer Affairs. After DCA approves it, at that point, then it goes to OAL for public notice. Then the last reg package that was approved by the board is examination waiting periods, professional corporations and accrediting agencies, and equivalent degrees. So that's in preparation for the initial review process as well. These are some minor and technical changes that were approved by the board in November 2019. So we're hoping to get that one going as soon as the CE regs are into the initial review process. So, and back to the CE, I didn't really go over that, what it would do. Updating some of our requirements for additional training that haven't been updated in a very long time. We're working on what is CE exceptions and waivers, updating some of our forms, clarifying some issues. There's nothing really, earth-shatteringly big changes, but the largest issue that we're dealing with are the CE waivers. So that's the update that I have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christy. And are there any questions so far from other staff? Kim, anything you would like to add? Because that really will conclude the board today. I'm really excited. I just wanted to take a minute to thank all our members of the public that have been with us since the first hour. So we really appreciate your feedback. We actually encourage you to be part of the board and sessions so that we can learn and get the feedback from you. And also a big thank you to our staff, Roseanne, everyone else has been really, I see the wave, John. Everyone that's been really helpful today and preparation this last 2 days. So it's been definitely a full pack today. So thank you all for participating, and Kim for leading this 2 days as well in preparation of the content of the agenda items. So I see our board members that they are just pointing out. John, I did a wait, so it comes first. John, you need to be unmuted.
I think he might be frozen.
Never frozen, never.
Ah!
So I just want to check in. I believe this is Dr. Rue's last meeting with us. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So,
That's correct. October 1 or before she becomes a pumpkin.
so Leah, I've only known you a short time, and I'm going to use your first name if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
I want to thank you for not just welcoming me to the board, but being a very active participant and educating me on how the board works. Your deep intellect, your deep passion, your understanding of this work and what the board does has been, I just respect it so deeply, but even more so, I really, really appreciate the heart that you bring into all of this work. It's quite amazing. And I just want to thank you for being part of my onboarding process and really helping me to see my way through this.
Thank you.
Christina.
So John said what I wanted to say, and I want to thank Leah for being, the board members and my partner in crime for that last 8 years. And so I know that, I hate seeing you being a pumpkin, but at the same time, I also know that, what you have done, for the board will always be there. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you for that. And the second thing is I want to give a big fat congratulations for Max, chairing this meeting, the very first Zoom meeting in such a wonderful, smooth manner. So thank you so much for your leadership, Max. You did a fabulous job.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. But I want to second what you said about Leah. I think even for the new board member, only took one session to understand the contribution of Leah to this board, and it's just, we're going to miss you a lot. We hope we learned from your insights. We'll do our best to make you proud, and but we also know that with your passion, we'll be hearing from you in so different forms and shapes. I think was Steve before said maybe as a member of the public, who knows? But thank you, Leah. It's been just an incredible joy to have you and for be a guidance for all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Deborah.
Leah. It just, we all came around the same time, 8 years ago, over 8 years ago. And I never thought Kim would leave before I did. That's a shock. And we're going on a decade of working for the board. I just have to say that you were always not only teaching, but always trying to, if someone had a disagreement, that wasn't good enough. We needed to talk about it. We needed to find out why. And so you were a real leader at making sure that the board, and I don't know if the members have noticed this, but we're very on one track and everyone listens to everybody. But Leah, you were the best on dragging out, I don't mean dragging out, I mean pulling out disagreements that one of us might have. You were able to cajole that person and pull out why, and then we would have another discussion about it. And I'd say 99.9% of the time, we were all in agreement by the time we were done and ready to vote on any, doesn't matter what it was. So I really thank you for that. And I think we all as a board continue to learn because we were willing to talk about why we agreed to disagree, but it was always cordial. And you led that every single time. You led those discussions. And I think we kind of let you do that because we knew you were good at it. And I really will miss you. I hope that somehow our paths cross in the future. I mean, we both are CSU gals. So hopefully I will be forever in debt to all of the stuff you taught me, all of this stuff. And I can promise you what I have learned from you, I transfer onto these potential new student teachers, and the empathy and the regard that we have to have for care, concern, and mental health. And these new teachers need to go into the practice understanding all of that, because that makes all the difference in a good teacher and a bad teacher. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm sure that our paths will cross again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I see Kim.
Well, Leah, my first memory of you is at an AASCB conference in San Diego, and joining Dean and your husband bringing Sophie, and you went on a bike ride, and Sophie was such a little pumpkin. And then Dean getting excited about having an LPCC member on the board. And Christy had worked with you to get the LPCC law on and get the language right. And I remember turning to Dean and I said, well, what about Leah? And she obviously nudged you, and you were so gracious and accepting, and you really helped our board understand what an LPCC is and what the differences are, and really helped educate us about that new profession that we knew nothing about. We were the last state to license this group, and I have appreciated you chairing and championing all those really important issues like supervision and license portability and all your contributions. And please know that you've left BDS in a better spot than when we found it. And I wish you continued success in your next endeavor. And I know your address, I know how to find you, and we can figure out how to keep you going until, pass you on to Steve. But thank you for all that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a joy. It really has. I've learned so much. Yeah. And this board, all the iterations in the last year have been a group of really amazing, hardworking people. And I'm so grateful for the experience.
Well, that concludes today. Thank you, everyone. We are going to be adjourned to November meeting, which the dates are, help me, Kim.
November 5th and 6th.
November 5th and 6th. Okay, everyone.
Stanley has his hand raised here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly. I didn't see you. Where are you?
Kelly, okay.
Just Stanley Wong with National Association of Social Workers. I want to give you a couple of policy ideas, but I also want to say some things about Leah. First of all, hopefully those working on the CE regulations might be able to find a way to add the content that we were talking about earlier, racial justice and anti-racism. I don't know if it's possible, but we're working on the regulation right now. The second thing is, and I think we may have mentioned this already, if we haven't, some of the provisions under the emergency order for telehealth are very, very useful and perhaps should be made permanent. And in particular, the temporary sort of license through the emergency management services for people who are helping their clients who move to California transition to a California licensee. That would be a wonderful thing. We've tested it. We've tried it out during this COVID period. It seems to be working. I haven't heard any complaints about it. And then I know everybody wants to go home. So wait, you're already at home. Sorry about that. I want to say a few things about Leah. Leah is one of the smartest and hardworking board members I've ever seen. And of course, you guys know I've been around for 25 years. So I've seen 25 years worth of board members. And she is right there at the top. Leah, you are just astounding. And I really appreciate you being on the board. I know we've gone back and forth on a number of things, but that's what it's about. So good luck to you in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I feel bad. I'm trying to close this meeting, but we all want to share something about Leah or Kim. I don't want to be that bad guy, but I don't want to hold you here. Anyone else before I officially close?
Gonna miss you, Leah.
We're going to miss you, Leah.
I'm going to miss you all too.
Yes, 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 me.
Thank you.
Bye, Leah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you in November.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Christina Kitamura, I have a